I'm John Law, this is Chasing Cars, and this is an Audi S5 Sportback. Now, the rest of the A5 range was launched a little bit earlier in Australia, but the Performance S models have been lagging a bit behind. But finally, it's here, and it's to compete with the likes of the BMW M340i and the Mercedes-AMG C43. So we're just going to check it out. We're going to check out the interior styling and then take it out on the road to see what the S5 Sportback is like to drive. Now we've jumped around the front just to show you where most of the updates are, because although the rear bumper is slightly restyled, it's at the front where you'll notice this wider single frame grille extends just a little bit more broadly and it drops a little bit lower. And with this black styling package, again, not my bag exactly, however it does look pretty menacing. And with the red brake calipers, it does a really good impression of a mini affordable RS variant. So let's check out the interior and see what it's like in there. Jumping inside the S5 Sportback, and that elegant sporty exterior is really nicely reflected in here. It starts with a 12.3-inch digital driver's display, which has satellite Google Maps imagery, which is really nice and crisp and easy to use. You also get S-specific hockey puck dials in there, which is pretty cool. That also works in conjunction with a 10.1-inch infotainment screen, which is now touch operated and has nice feedback, nice clicky feedback there. So it's really easy to use up on the move, though we do a little bit begrudge the loss of the rotary controller, which means you really don't miss anything. So with the touchscreen, you've just got to be a little bit more accurate, which is a difficult thing on bumpy roads, but we understand most people prefer it. And you also get this dicky little storage thing, which is nice for the key, and it's nice and rubberized. Now that infotainment system works with Apple CarPlay as well, and you've got a 19-speaker B&O sound system, which is pretty bumpin' and sounds great. As for the specification on this particular car, it's very resale friendly. So the Glacier White outside is complemented by black inside. We'd probably go for something a little bit snazzier ourselves, but you do get this nice carbon inlay as an option on this model, and the fine Napa leather seats are quilted and really attractive, comfortable, and really pleasant to touch. It's the same thing on the steering wheel, which is nicely perforated and a leather wrapped item. You've obviously got all your controls you need here and nice little flappy paddles behind it, and you get that same perforation here on the gear stick, and it's just a really nice place to be. It feels really well put together, classy, and like an Audi S car should. So let's see how the space is in the back of this S5 Sportback. Now in the back seat of the S5 Sportback, this is where it gains points back against the coupe, because obviously you've got 4 doors in this car and they actually open really widely for quite easy ingress. Now, as you can see, at 6'2", I actually have a pretty decent amount of space behind my own driving position. Even with that sloping attractive roofline, I do have a little bit more headroom, though anyone shorter than me is going to be really comfortable back here. Legroom, I've got just a touch behind my own position. These Tombstone sport seats that are massaging and heated in the front do obstruct vision a little bit, so if you're prone to getting car sick, this might be a little bit unfortunate, but whatever, because the bench itself is super comfortable. The quilted Napa leather seats back here, you can really sink into them, and although there is a 5th seat used as a 4-seater, this would actually be a really very comfortable Grand Tourer for 2 adults and some kids in the back seat. That's complemented as well by their own climate control system back here and 2 USB ports, as well as a nice wide armrest that is again really nicely padded, and it has these quite funky flip out cup holders that are sort of just big enough to take a bottle. So overall then, while it may look incredibly attractive from the outside and not like anyone can fit back here, it's actually a really pleasant space to be. So let's check out how practical this car is in the boot. Around the back of the S5 Sportback, and as you would expect, it's got a sporty back. It looks great back here, and with this car's optional black exterior styling package, you get this black rear diffuser, which would normally be chrome. Now, I'm a bit partial to chrome, so I probably wouldn't opt for this option, but I understand the take rate for this option package is pretty excellent. Now, under this boot, it's a hatchback, and it's electrically operated because you wouldn't want to have to open a boot yourself. And you get 465 litres of cargo space, which is really impressive for a car that looks like a coupe. It's a really nice, easy to use load bay, and you also get some netting and some spaces off to the side to store things, and some underfloor storage where there's a spare tyre as well. There is a bit of a high load lip, but you've got this bright work as in the SQ5, and yeah, it's an attractive little boot, and it's super easy to load because of that nice opening of the load bay. So that's the S5's practicality. Let's take it out for a spin on the road. So what's the S5 like out here on the open road? Well, the first impressions are fantastic. This thing is a lovely thing to be inside. You're surrounded by that cabin, which we've already covered, and yeah. The experience is largely dominated by the engine, again, just like the other S models, and in this car it's a 3-litre V6 turbocharged engine, and it kicks out 260 kilowatts and 500 Newton meters. It's also available with a TDI engine over in Europe, which is the same engine as in the SQ5 TDI that we've also been driving today, and that engine, although it would be smashing in this vehicle, doesn't come to Australia, which is a bit of a shame, though this engine definitely has quite a different character, so it marks it out as a car that is much more suited to sort of ripping up to the red line, and the sound it makes when doing that is really pleasant, and there's more than enough power. It's a really nice balance of grunt and daily usability without being compromised in terms of sound or unpleasant characteristics like some cars can be. It's exactly what you would expect an S car to be, in fact. Now that's linked up to an 8-speed automatic gearbox, so no dual clutches here, it's all just torque converter action, which is no bad thing actually, because this ZF unit has been expertly tuned by Audi, and when it's in its dynamic mode it gives these really crisp shifts that ram home. It feels like a dual clutch, but it's not, so you don't have to worry about the lack of creep or the awkward driving experience you get with a gearbox like that, because it's just really great for daily use. I mentioned the modes in the gearbox making a difference, and that brings me on to the chassis of this car, because as standard, every S5 Sportback is adaptively suspended. In fact, every car that shares this MLB platform, every S car, so all the S4s and S5s have adaptive suspension. It's not an air suspension system, it's just a standard steel sprung system, but it works really nicely. In comfort mode, it's nice and plush. This S5 feels really daily usable. There's no real compromises there, even though it's riding on big 20-inch wheels. You also get a balanced mode, it's called, which then just ups the firmness a little bit, which I really like to use on Australian roads because it gives you that sort of calmness a lot of the time, but stiffens up when you're cornering. You've also got dynamic steering, which is definitely worth doing because it just gives a little bit of extra weight to the steering. It doesn't make it unpleasant at all. And also attached to that, your individual mode, you can have an engine sound setting. So you've got subdued, which is hilarious, and automatic or pronounced, which is loud. Now loud sounds pretty good to me in the cabin, but as some people have pointed out, it's not really necessary because it sounds so good in regular mode anyway. And on that note, we're going to put it in loud mode and we can hear just how good this V6 sounds, because it's got a really sort of throaty, quite angry, buzzy sound. It's great. I really enjoy this engine and it complements the chassis really well. As for handling dynamics, it's really pleasant. It doesn't do anything weird at all. It's such a well sorted out vehicle. It feels so foursquare on the road, and the turn-in grip is really nice without being overly aggressive. And then from the mid-corner, you can actually really balance this car on the throttle, which is a bit surprising for an all-wheel drive car. This Quattro system, it can now send 85% of torque to the rear wheels, so you do actually get that feeling of the rear axle just helping you turn the corner just a little bit more than you might have otherwise expected, and it very rarely falls into understeer. Only when you push it a little bit too hard on corner entry do you get anything resembling understeer. Otherwise, it's just point, turn, and bang out with a little bit of attitude when you're in dynamic mode. It's a wonderful thing to drive, and yeah, it's not a boring Audi. That's the biggest thing, really, and that's a huge compliment in my book for this car. Now the other thing we're going to talk about is safety features, and the S5 thankfully does get everything. It's got a really easy to use cruise control system, so adaptive obviously on this car, and the distance is actually quite close and it stays on its selected number pretty well. It doesn't waver too much for any reason or anything like that, and it's easy to access, and it's the same story with the lane keep assist system. It's just on the end of the stalk and you push it and it works really nicely. It makes a really easy cruisy car to drive on the highway. Now, a quick chat about the other models in this range, because the S4s also share the same engine as this, and we did spend a little bit of time in those cars, and frankly, as good as this S5 Sportback is, the S4 Avant actually just offers a little bit more corner adjustability at the expense of some ride quality, which for me makes it a more enjoyable vehicle. However, the S5 is a sharper, more scalpel-like machine. So, what are our detailed opinions of the updated Audi S5? That engine is still a lovely thing, and whether you get the S5 or the S4, you'll really enjoy the way it zings to redline, and it makes a classy noise. We do kind of wish that Audi did bring the TDI engine here that you can get in the SQ5. However, we understand that customers just really want that engine. And overall, it's a great package of livability, pace and driver enjoyment that is really difficult to match. But if you think the BMW M340i does it better, or perhaps the Mercedes equivalent, the C43 AMG, make sure to let me know in the comments section down below. And while you're down there, we'd love it if you could hit subscribe and that bell icon. As always, thank you for watching Chasing Cars.